noble, extensive, rich meadow near a fine, large pond of fresh water, the cattle being up to their bellies in as fine, long, sweet grass as I've seen anywhere. These were the words used by Lachlan Macquarie, the first military governor of New South Wales, following a visit to the Southern Plains in late October 1820. Plains that would become the township of Goulburn. This was just one of numerous regions he toured on his watch as governor, founding places as he went. His idea of a Great South Road was modelled on the Great Roads of England, which radiated from London, opening up new land that would encourage free settlers in their agricultural pursuits. The task was pretty mammoth for its time, but the good thing was, New South Wales had just the workforce to get the job done. Australia was still being fed by masses of convicts from England, and with a labour force like that, almost anything could be built. These poor unfortunates, mainly those who were least capable of reform or improvement, were viewed as ideal candidates for road gangs. This is Towrang Stockade, the largest penal camp on the construction of the Great South Road. The stockade system had been operating for nearly 50 years in the colony by the time one had been established at Towrang. Stockades were positioned at intervals at roughly 16 kilometres along the length of the new road. A simple, efficient arrangement designed to keep the labour close to the task and firmly under control. There are mixed reports on the number of men that were housed here. One by Judge William Burton in 1838 states that Towrang housed 91 men, 70 of which were in irons and 21 without. In 1907, local historian Charles McAllister claimed the stockade held no less than 250 convicts for most of its 13-year duration. Convicts were divided into two gangs. The light sentence men, also known as 7-year men, took care of officers' horses and quarters, driving bullock teams and felling trees along the road. The rest were the Iron Gang lot, with sentences of 14 years to life. They did all the heavy road work and building culverts and bridges, working from dawn until late afternoon, in chains, under the guard of armed soldiers. They likely wore a magpie uniform, introduced by Governor Macquarie in 1814, designed to humiliate with its bold, contrasting colours. Plus, the free settlers found them easier to identify. As per European traditions at the time, the colour yellow was often associated with disgrace. The stockade itself was likely surrounded by a timber wall. It housed at least 13 buildings made of pisé, consisting of a small cottage, blacksmith shop, a number of huts for the soldiers and their families, and possibly even a bakery. A horse stable was also on site, right by a powder magazine built into the Wallandilly riverbank. The huts and boxes in which the convicts slept were of timber construction and measured about 4 metres square, built on wheels to allow for easy relocation to other stockade sites. 10 to 12 convicts were crammed into each cell, where they slept on bare boards and had just one blanket each. Running through each cell of the Iron Gang convicts was a central chain which was passed through the leg irons to secure them at night. Food-wise, they survived on meagre rations. What was for supper, you ask? How about some salt junk, a piece of damper, and post and rails tea? In other words, highly salted preserved pork or beef, a bit of bread, and poor quality tea strewn with coarse tea leaves that resembled the coarse posts and rails of a fence. Nice. Discipline was said to be pretty harsh, enforced by floggings routinely dished out for even the most ridiculous of offences, like smoking or talking to people passing on the road. 20 to 50 lashes for trivial offences, and 100 if you attempted to escape. 2 floggers were known to be at the stockade. The role of head flogger sat with Billy O'Rourke, a small, weathered-looking character that loved the inflictions he made with the cat-o'-nine-tails. The other guy was Black Francis, an African bloke that came out from Goulburn on the occasion, also known to be pretty savage with his floggings. Poor old Francis did eventually meet his demise in the bush by Runnerwater's Creek in Goulburn, found with 3 lead slugs in his carcass. I'm guessing he had a few people that didn't like him so much. A number of convicts did actually manage to escape the stockade, some of them turning to bushranging. Walking the stockade site today doesn't reveal a great deal. It's on private property, but the owner knows how important such places are in our history, so it's open for anyone to visit. Piles of rubble can be found hidden in the long grass if you look carefully. This fenced-off area contains the excavation of a soldier's hut, one of 6 constructed in a line at this location. The excavation exposed a stone hearth, wall foundations, fragments of bone, glass, and stems from smoking pipes. It's likely the buildings were sold or dismantled and used elsewhere on completion of the road construction. The powder magazine was there to securely store blasting powder used on the road cuttings and for splitting building stones. Not only did it prevent convicts from getting their hands on it, but it also prevented passing bushrangers adding explosives to their arsenals. The entrance and top part of it was restored in 1975, a lintel added above the doorway, which is somewhat different to the original archway that supposedly spanned the entrance. Close by, on the other side of Towrang Creek, you can find a trio of gravestones, though up to 18 graves of soldiers, family members and convicts are claimed to also be in the vicinity. The 3 we can see are of Private John Moxey of the 80th Regiment, Elizabeth Whittaker, and Little Mary Brown. Whilst the current 4-lane Hume Highway may dominate the landscape, there is still remnants of the Great South Road opposite the stockade site. Towrang Bridge can be found straddling Towrang Creek, a very short walk from Thomas Derrick VC rest area. It was built in 1839 using dressed sandstone, hewn by none other than members of the chain gangs. It hasn't been proven, but it's thought the bridge was designed by Scottish-born master stonemason and bridge designer David Lennox. 3 years it took to build, and it was still in use until the late 1940s. Colonial bridges that were definitely on his resume are Liverpool's Lansdowne Bridge and the Lapston Bridge in the Blue Mountains. You can still wander along the Great South Road from the bridge, crossing over the first 2 culverts before the current highway slices through the site. A 3rd culvert can be found on the northern Stockade side of the highway, before the old road hooks back down to the south. Here you can walk the old road again and see culverts 4, 5 and 6, also beautifully restored. The Great South Road may have been a feat of its time, but it did still receive some critiques. In 1858 it was described as a scarcely formed bullock track with its tottering bridges, rugged steeps and treacherous passes. Might I add that bushrangers also used it to accost travellers. I mean, how else were they meant to earn an income? Towrang Stockade lasted for only 13 years, from about 1833 to 1846. Undoubtedly a hive of activity, yet brutal at the same time. A place where bullocks received better treatment than the labour force contained within its timber walls. Not a great deal remains of the stockade today, But the silence here is its own reminder. Towrang Stockade was more than a waypoint on a developing colonial road. It was a place where lives were spent, lost and largely forgotten. Wandering across the grassy site overlooking the meandering river, it's impossible not to feel the weight of those who worked, suffered and endured here, shaping a landscape that would outlast them all.